5th. It's going to be 7 p.m. on the 4th and a 2 p.m. matinee on the 5th at the Klein Memorial Theater, Bridgeport.
Okay. Well, we're on.
All right.
Excuse me. Charlie, Grady, and I were just chatting about having a frog in our respective throats. So mine just showed up.
Yeah.
Hey, y'all. It's the show on 103.5 FMLP WNHH. My name is Michelle Turner, and I have the good fortune of being the show's host. In the studio with me is New Haven native, right?
New Haven native, yeah.
New Haven native Charlie Grady, or Charles Grady II, Jr.?
No Junior.
Just Charles Grady.
Charlie Grady, that's it.
Yeah. Now, in case you don't know, that's Captain Grady's baby boy.
There it is.
And he's been involved in law enforcement for quite some time. So give me a little background, Charlie.
Oh, okay. So my background, law enforcement, I grew up in New Haven. We moved to West Haven when I was about 6 years old. Stayed connected to the New Haven community. My mother made it a point to, to never let us lose sight of where we came from.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I moved into an all Italian neighborhood, she made sure we went back into our neighborhood and grew up code switching from an early age.
Now, what neighborhood was that in New Haven?
So we were in Brookside.
Okay.
Yeah, we came from Brookside and got out and then went to West Haven, went to school in West Haven, grew up there. I had 4 uncles and a 5th one that I called an uncle that were all police officers. My father was a police officer, as you just mentioned. So I grew up around law enforcement, and it was just a way of life for me. I never saw it as anything other than that. And I knew the importance of what my father and my uncles were doing, especially during the time of the Black Panther movement in New Haven and so forth. And my mother,
had to be an interesting time for them, too.
It was. And, I watched the camaraderie between Black law enforcement officers at the time. And even though some of them didn't get along, you would never know until you left the job and went out someplace and saw that they didn't sit together, but man, they had each other's back on a regular basis back then. So I tell the story often about, growing up in a law enforcement family. It's a very unique experience for a young Black kid, especially in an all-white community. But again, being able to bounce back and forth and having some knowledge of self and going back and forth. And I think that has benefited me and a bunch of others who were in the same situation in the long run. But the reality is that I remember saying to myself, I was not going to be a cop. I wasn't going to be a cop because, they were all cops and I wanted to do something different. And I went to a tech school to become an electrician. First I went for plumbing. Then I realized I didn't want to be messing with people's toilets. And then I switched over to electronics and graduated, got a job, started at UNH for a short time, working, going to school at night doing electronics, and got a job working for a company called Anton Power. And they were the first company to do the portable power packs on the back of cameras for news reports and so forth. And it was a great job, but boy, I'm a people person, and that job was like just not going to make it for me. And I started to think, what do I want to do? What do I really want to? And no matter how many times I would steer away from law enforcement, it was what I knew. Like I, as a young child, I knew radio codes from New Haven PD because I would listen to my father's scanner, and he'd sit in his, his leather chair. And I would understand these codes and so forth. And I knew that stuff better than any rookie cop coming out of the academy when I was 10, So it was just a natural thing for me. And my buddy sort of said to me, why don't you go become a cop? And I was like, no, I'm not going to do it.
Still not there yet.
I'm not going to do it. And then I did this whole thing about, this, I'm going to go and take the test just to see how I fare out. But I'm not going to go to New Haven PD because my father's there. And I don't want people thinking that everything I got because of my father. Because he was, listen, Charlie Grady Sr. was the man.
Yeah, he still is in a lot of ways.
That's right. He put it
very
down.
well respected.
Absolutely. Never heard a bad word about my father. And I've listened too. I made, but the reality is I took the test for Hamden Police Department and finished in the top 5 and ended up getting hired as a Hamden police officer.
And how long did you do that?
I did that for 21 years. 21 years. And actually started at the end of 81, early 82, was on the street. And after about 2 years, year and a half on the street in patrol, I got asked to be on the motorcycle division.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because Hamden, again, Hamden was predominantly white, and
Yeah.
but it didn't matter to me because I grew up in a law enforcement family, and law enforcement transcended color. Ultimately, for me,
Mm-hmm.
it's like we have a job. We're here to serve everybody.
Right.
And I got some real rough lessons though. Being in Hamden, there was a whole lot of racist attitudes.
I was
back
getting
then.
ready to say, did you bump up against stuff? Because I grew up, imagine my transformation. I went from Bridgeport to Hamden.
Yeah.
So it was a big difference. And this is, late 60s, early 70s.
Exactly.
And Hamden was not as colored as it is now.
Yeah. Hamden has a lot more diversity now than I ever imagined.
Yeah.
And when I came on, there was 3 black cops on Hamden Police Department.
And probably
now there's probably 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, and you were probably the youngest.
Oh, I was absolutely the youngest.
You were the youngest, right?
And the most disliked by the older regime, because I was young and I was full of energy, and I was not insecure, and they just weren't used to that. They weren't used to a young black man like me being in there and having a sense of self. And
not only that, I mean, like you said, this is something that's second nature to you.
That's right.
And,
and I was good at it. And so I became the first black motorcycle cop in Hamden's history. And it was funny because they used to call me Chocolate Chips because, the television show Chips was popular back then. And so this was little subtleties that I would deal with. And I'll never forget one day I went to work. This was about 7 years on the job. And I dealt with all the little isms that would come my way, the black jokes and this, that, and the other thing that would happen. I dealt with it. It didn't faze me because I basically looked at you as an idiot. If you're having that conversation with me, you either are trying to insult me, and I'm not going to let you do that. I'm not going to let you realize or understand that you've gotten to me in any way, shape, or form, or you're just an idiot. So either way, I compensated for people's weaknesses, right? And so I accepted people for who they were. And I would even say, oh, he's a racist, but he's all right. He ain't gonna do nothing to hurt nobody. He's just,
he's just ignorant.
He's just ignorant. You know what I mean? And so I learned to live with it. I learned to live with it. And then this one day, about 7 years into my career there, I remember walking into the back of the police station, and I was feeling good on this day. And some guy walked by me, one of the cops walked by me, and he said, "Hey, make sure you go down to the line there and keep your cousins from coming into Hamden today." And it hit me. The reason I was having such a good day was because I went that whole day into the late afternoon without hearing one comment about your people and your cousins and that sort of thing. And all those guys are dead and gone now, but and they didn't think anything of it. And it was, it was fun for them. You know what I mean? But I never.
They saw it as being harmless,
right? But they meant every word of it,
right?
You know what I mean? And it was just the way that they saw, their town, their city. They wanted to keep their city out of the hands and the grips of, the New Haven folks.
Yeah.
And that was then, you know what I mean? So I really love what I see happening now in Hamden. I mean, there's still a long way to go in all of our suburban communities. Yeah. But Hamden has done a great job of trying to, diversify a little bit. From the time you were there and the time I was there.
Yeah.
They have a way
big
to go.
Time. They have a way to go, but
all of them do.
It's slow. Yeah. Slow but steady.
Right.
Deliberate speed.
Right. And so from a law enforcement perspective, I cannot tell you how many changes that I've witnessed. You have to remember, I came in, I was 21 years old when I became a cop.
Yeah, and that's really young.
Yeah, I was young and I was immature. But the things I learned from those that pretended to be my friends and then would show their true colors periodically, but I learned from them.
Yeah.
And again, I accepted them for who they were. I accepted them. So I know you don't necessarily like me or understand me.
Right.
But you can't even grasp why you don't like me yourself.
Right.
And I feel bad for you. You understand? So, and I was flossing. I was a young dude. I was making money and I had a band and I was playing in a band and I bought my first BMW convertible, bright red. I was flossing. I was living the life. I was making money and having a great time. And modeling. And I was doing shows, and then I ended up going on television and doing music videos and doing a lot of acting and film and television.
Now, did that take you out of being a police officer,
No, I
or
did
was
it.
it like
It was
in the middle of it,
Yeah,
or?
I did both. So about 9 years in, not even 9 years, about 7, 8, 9 years in, I was playing in a band called Good News, with a bunch of the guys here from Connecticut, probably one of the best bands that Connecticut has seen in a long time. Not because I was in it, but because they were good.
True musicians.
True.
Yeah.
At the Foundry. Come on now.
Yeah,
And,
I know.
and so I had a friend who was a photographer and said, you got a good look, and you should let me take pictures of you, and you should probably do some acting. And I'm like, I did some modeling in New York for Pierre Cardin, Breezy Point. But it wasn't runway stuff. It was basically
it was print, right?
Yeah, it was print, and so I did a lot of that. And so I said, okay, take the pictures. And I got on a train after work because I remained a cop the whole time. I got on the train after work, went down to Grand Central where they had the newsstands, and I got a magazine called Backstage.
Yes.
I got the Backstage paper, got back on the train, went home, and I submitted my pictures to a couple different ads that I saw for videos and movies. Within 2 weeks, I got a call from Roby Reed.
Wow.
Casting, yeah. And this was when she was in New York, and she was, fairly new, but she was making a name for herself. And I got cast for a music video, Freddie Jackson's Do Me Again.
Yes.
And
I remember.
Yeah, and I was the featured, model in that show with a beautiful Asian girl, and he was singing to us at the table, and it was on BET. And
yes.
My mother and everybody went crazy. They were like, "Oh, we saw you on BET." And so from there, I got the bug, and I would work Monday through Friday, 7 to 3 as a motorcycle cop, and by 3:30, I was on the train going to New York auditioning, or going to Boston auditioning. And I was getting roles. I was getting these little, extra parts here and there. And the next thing you know, I started getting real attention. And I actually got cast initially to play Tiger Woods in the HBO Tiger Woods story.
Wow.
But I had to turn it down because I was a cop.
Right.
And they said to me, it was an intense audition. They said to me, we're going to send you down to the Carolinas, teach you how to swing like Tiger, walk like Tiger. And I'm like, okay, great. But I got to go to work.
Right.
And they're like, wait a minute.
I got a real job.
Yeah. And they were like, yo, you just wasted our time. So, so I started taking classes, started doing soap operas, All My Children, Guiding Light.
Yeah. Didn't you do All My Kids? For how long?
Yeah. I was off and on there for about 4 years.
Right.
And different characters here and there. A lot of under 5 characters. But it was fun. I got to work with all of them. I got to meet Kelly Ripa before she was,
before she was the Kelly Ripa.
I got to meet all these people. You know what I mean? Eva LaRue from CSI, all those people from the soap operas. And just a great vibe that I had going then. But I was still a popo, and I was still doing, law enforcement. And then I got transferred into narcotics unit. And that's where my career really just boomed. And I was assigned to the FBI for a joint task force, and was assigned to the FBI, the DEA, Connecticut State Police Narcotics, Hamden Narcotics, and U.S. Marshals all at the same time.
So quite naturally, the acting kind of slowed down.
Yeah, it slowed down
because you couldn't necessarily be seen everywhere, right?
Yeah, but you know what? I was able to manage, doing a couple different films. So what I tried to do then was at least one movie a year, and maybe 1 or 2 TV shows a year, and that was enough for me to maintain and stay in the Screen Actors Guild. So did that for a long time, and I retired. I had probably one of the best careers of anybody I know, and I'll tell this to anyone. When I say earlier about the growth of communities and law enforcement, I've seen the ebb and flow of law enforcement change dramatically, from being militaristic to being too soft, to coming back into some happy medium, to, the Eric Garner case, all of these things. And I have a lot of wisdom and opinions about what law enforcement should look like today.
So what should it look like?
So what law enforcement should look like today, this is a real tough one because people think automatically, you know what? Police officers should reflect the community. They should be from the community that they're policing. And there's some degree of truth to that. But I want you to stop and think about it. We all grew up in a particular neighborhood, and there was that one kid that was a pain in the neck, and he was trouble, right? He or she was trouble, and you had beef with him all the time, right? And they got beat up, right? Imagine that person becoming a police officer in your neighborhood. And you, having beef with them all those years, guess what?
Now you got a problem.
Right, now you got a problem. So really, did it benefit you to have someone from your community be your police officer? I think it's a much bigger issue. I think the issue is we need to have law enforcement officials who have lived life experience in multicultural and disciplines.
But how can you accomplish that? Because we still have folks who don't necessarily live in those type of environments.
So the way you accomplish it is to seek out individuals who are well-rounded and not monolithic. You know, we don't want one-dimensional people becoming police officers. We need someone who could say, hey, Shashri Akal to someone on the street and understand what that means to a Sikh, or Assalamu alaikum and greet someone. You know, you break barriers, and you need someone who has a worldly view. And most often, people who don't view the world and see themselves as a part of a bigger scheme of the world, if they go into law enforcement, they come in with one opinion and they leave with one opinion. And that opinion typically gets jaded when they deal with the same population over and over again. And they start to assume who everyone is based on how they look and how they speak.
Yeah.
And so I'm talking across the board. I'm not just talking about white cops and black. I'm talking about, you know, I've heard black cops say some of the most degrading things about Muslims and about Sikhs. And I just sit there and I say to myself, you don't know those people. You don't know a damn thing about them. So how could you make that ridiculous assertion? So it starts with who becomes a police officer. That's where the problem is. And how do we develop a criteria for who becomes a police officer?
Yeah, because that was going to be my next question is training.
Yeah. And so,
because that's the biggie.
And so there needs to be, which I plan to do, a training curriculum and facility where you get the education on culture and ethnic background.
Does that include taking them into particular neighborhoods while they are?
Absolutely, through training. So you shouldn't even be able to hit the street until about a year after you've been exposed to everything.
Okay.
Right? And so it may cost a little bit more money, but guess what? You'll save that money on the back end when you're not having all these lawsuits for civil rights violations.
Yeah.
Right? So believe me, I put a lot of thought into it. I won't divulge my whole plan now, but it's coming because that is the strength in what makes law enforcement an entity that people will respect again and care to have at their beck and call. And again, there's a whole bunch of people out there that are doing great law enforcement, and there's a whole bunch of people out there that got in because their cousin's uncle's father was mayor, and there's a distinct difference oftentimes. But I think in general, the worldview, you know, you don't really know law enforcement until you see it from a Parisian perspective. Until you've been to France and see how they police in France. Until you've been to Turkey and see what they do in Turkey, or Sardinia, Italy, and see how the police interact and what happens there. And then you get a better sense of, you know what, I fit in this way. And even on a smaller scale, a police officer from West Haven Police Department, hypothetically, needs to go to LA and see how they police.
Yeah, because that was my, as you're saying that was my thought, you know, what don't we do in the United States that they may do somewhere else?
It's the interexchange of law enforcement. So you want to build out a broader perspective of what law enforcement is and your real purpose. You see, I run this FBI youth camp, and I tell young people all the time when I ask them, why do you want to go into law enforcement? If they come out of their face and say, well, I want to put the bad guys in jail, I say, you might want to rethink that, because that's not the reason to go into law enforcement. I said, first and foremost, there's no such thing as the bad guy. See, there are people that make bad choices. There are people with mental health issues, but there's very few the bad guys in the world. So you have to look at what your real purpose is. My purpose is to assist. My purpose is to protect and help. And so if you're not coming at me saying, I want to get into law enforcement because I want to make a difference and help, you know, members of communities, elderly people, then you got the wrong attitude. If you're coming in saying, I want to put the bad guys in jail, guess who the bad guys are? My cousin June's a bad guy, if by your definition. But guess what? There's a whole bunch of people who love my cousin June. Right? Yeah. And because he's great to them, and because he's made bad decisions, or my cousin Ricky, whatever the case may be, you can't automatically look at yourself as us against them. And if that's your attitude walking into law enforcement, you're going to have a problem.
But, you know, it's funny because I'm thinking about as a reporter, what we used to have to do, part of it was cop rounds, what we call cop rounds, right? You call every single cop, in the stations around the whole New Haven County.
Yep.
So, you find out what's going on, any leads or anything. So there was this cop in New Haven who always, every now and then, would start out, and I'm paraphrasing, with the saying, he said, "Oh yeah, if we could just catch that black male that's about 5'6" with cornrows running through the Ville,
wearing a hoodie,
all our crimes would be solved in New Haven." And we always used to laugh because basically that's the way that people thought about it.
Right.
This is what the bad guy looks like.
That's right.
So we're gonna stop him all the time.
That's right. And so the community owns a little bit of that too, right? The community owns a little bit of that, and I hate to hear the us against them. Right?
Yeah.
And so I know it's an uphill battle. I'm an ant trying to push a boulder uphill with this whole perspective, but I've got lived experience that can show that if you're willing to be open and understand how it feels to walk in someone else's shoes for 10 minutes, you might learn something. You might see things from a different perspective that can help you and everyone in your community. So I took about 12 guys that were all former gang members and had been arrested and charged with gun charges themselves. I took them to a shooting simulator at Milford Police Department, a digital 3-dimensional shooting simulator. And I said to them, because they all said, cops shoot people in the legs. They don't have to kill anybody. And I was like, okay, all right, I'm going to let you dispel your own theory. I said, so here's the deal. And they put a simulator, a stunner on them so that they can actually feel the shot if they get hit. And I said, okay, you're the police officer. There's a motor vehicle stop. And they walked through this whole thing. And the first time around, they were so hell-bent on proving that police officers didn't have to pull their gun out at a motor vehicle stop, that every single one of them got shot and killed.
Wow.
But let me tell you what, the second time we ran the exercise, guess where their gun was? In their hand, right? In their hand as they walked up before they even started talking. You understand? So it helps to shape your narrative and the way you see other people's predicament. And I try to tell young people all the time when I talk to them with the youth group or anything that I do, we all make snap decisions, right? In law enforcement, your snap decision could mean whether you go home or not.
Right.
Right. Or
I've heard that
else.
before.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we all make these judgments about they should have did this and they should have did that. These young brothers got a chance to be in those same shoes. And I'm telling you, every single one of them said, you know what? I see it differently now. And that was just a simulation. So that blood and adrenaline starts flowing. Listen, there's a thing that everyone has. It's a 4-letter word. It's a nasty word. It's called fear. And don't think for 1 second police ain't afraid either. And then there's this narrative, well, if you're too scared to do your job, don't become a cop. Okay, then who's going to be the cop?
Right.
Okay, you got robots. Well, who's going to be the one to come to your house when your house gets broken into? Okay,
right.
So until we can take the human element out of people that become police officers, you're going to have some of that.
But now, is there not, because, the community has experienced, right? Ever since, I could easily say, and I'll take New Haven as an example because I don't have any statistics in front of me or anything. But since the 80s, the New Haven community, specifically the Black and brown communities, have now experienced years of people getting shot and killed. Unarmed folks getting shot and killed. Young men killing each other. Young children being killed by just stray bullets. Has that changed attitudes as far as cooperation?
I'll bring that word back up again, fear. Okay. So if I'm a police officer and I'm sworn to protect and serve, and on the 10 o'clock news, I see 2 individuals walk up to a car and shoot a police officer in the head sitting in his car doing a report, unprovoked. If I look on YouTube and see a video of a motor vehicle stop, I'm a human being. I'm a police officer. And I see a police officer trying to do his job getting shot and killed and ambushed, I'm on a heightened awareness because survival is still number one, right? And I'm not justifying unarmed shootings. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is trying to make people understand that if not the police officer, then who? If not the person who puts the uniform on and says, I'm going to try to stop that person from robbing your bank and robbing your store. And it's so crazy because sometimes people will say, well, you could stop them without killing them. Well, if that were possible, then there'd be no need for law enforcement. It's a dangerous gig. And yes, all of our communities, New Haven included, have seen a higher rate of unarmed people being shot. And it's all due to that fear. And again, I go back to this thing of it's a reality check. Because there was a time when people didn't shoot at cops the way they shoot at cops today.
Yeah.
There was a time when, I remember in 1982, you actually had to fight as a cop. When I came on, I never pulled my gun on anybody because I didn't fear being shot by anybody. That was just sort of unheard of.
Yeah.
Billy Bradley got shot in New Haven during a bank robbery. That was the greatest tragedy ever because people had a different level of respect for law enforcement.
Yeah.
And you don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg, right?
Right.
So did they lose respect for cops because cops started just going off the rails, or did it just become?
But that's my question.
Yeah.
Has cooperation changed between police and community?
It's ebb and flow. And here's what I've noticed over 36 years in the game. You have different time periods. So summertime, you might get a little bit more cooperation from different leaders in the community, depending on who's getting their needs met and the attention that they're seeking. Typically on the street, there's a ton of people that cooperate with law enforcement to try to shut down violence and crime in their neighborhood. Ton of people. It's not highlighted. They're not out there because this whole thing about being a snitch or whatever.
Right.
But you'll know when those people stop cooperating, there's a spike in the crime. There's a spike in the crime, typically. So for me, I got to tell you, I've seen all this stuff come and go and change the changes. And the answer is a combination of technology, old school policing, and a mutual respect. And until we get that, and there's a couple different ways that we can get that back. But it's a difficult challenge. It really is. And if people are shut off, I mean, I can't tell you, people say to me all the time, my daughter says to me, I can't stand the police because they do this and they do that. And I said, I get frustrated. Nobody gets more frustrated than me.
Yeah, because it's got to be hard, on a black man to watch a lot of this stuff, and you're trained.
And I'm saying that didn't have to happen.
Right.
Right. So there's one in particular that really blows me away. And it's a guy who gets out of his SUV, and there's 4 cops with their guns drawn on him. He's a big brother, and he backs up towards them to the sound of their voice, and he's commanding them. And he's doing exactly what they said. And finally he says, what am I doing? He says, I'm going to get back in my car. You guys aren't arresting me and not doing anything. So he starts to walk back to his car. Now there's 4 of them, and they shoot him instead of tackle him. Now, in my day, we'd have tackled that dude.
Right.
And we'd have been fighting. That's just how it was. Listen, I was 136 pounds soaking wet, but I had the heart of a lion. I'd fight anybody, you know what I mean? But because that came along with being a cop.
Right.
And nowadays,
and that was the method.
Right. And nowadays it's taser, it's gun, and I'm not fighting nobody. I'm not touching anybody. I'm not getting hit. I'm not getting hurt.
Yeah.
Because it's a different environment, because the respect level of human life and interaction has changed drastically. And I don't know how we get back to people having, I mean, you see it once in a while and they highlight it all over Facebook and so forth. When an officer gets out of his car and plays basketball with a kid, or, he talks someone down that's trying to kill himself. You see that, but that's what it should be every day. Now, again, I am a real strong defender of what's right. I see a lot of police officers across the country doing the wrong thing based on fear. Nobody is more affected by that than me, because I feel as though, first and foremost, if you're that afraid, maybe you need to be doing something else, but you're a human being. as I said before.
Yeah, right.
So let's find a way to mitigate that. Let's find a way to get. But the reality is that we're never going to have a field where we could just go out and pick the perfect police officer out of some cornfield and put them into play, and everybody's happy with them. It's not going to happen. So we've got to find ways to work together to make the community and law enforcement. And I'm so tired of hearing that phrase, bridging the gap and all that stuff. Stop talking about it and be about it. Sit down with your officers, weed out the ones that aren't ready for your community, and work together. Because you can't have a us against them and expect anything to get done.
You're listening to the show on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, broadcasting live from downtown New Haven. We are streaming live on TuneIn Radio and NewHavenIndependent.org. We're also streaming live video on Facebook Live right now. So all you have to do is go to Facebook.com/New Haven Independent, or just go to your Facebook page and look us up. In the studio with me is Charlie Grady, 36-year professional of law enforcement. So now that he's given us some background and his opinion, we got some kind of way that we can see him going in the future. Talk a little bit about Hang Time.
So Hang Time was born. I was running a anti-gun violence homicide strategy for the U.S. Attorney's Office. So after I retired, I went to work in private industry for 6 years, traveled the country doing executive investigations. And
I like that term.
Yeah, executive investigations, internal executive investigations, internal fraud and stuff like that. But the
white collar crimes.
And I had a great time. It's a very different world of doing investigations without a gun and a badge.
I'm sure.
But I succeeded, and I was very successful at it. And then I realized I needed to get back to the community, get back to work in New Haven, because I was traveling over the country. So I ended up taking a job at the U.S. Attorney's Office as an internal investigator. And there I was assigned by then U.S. Attorney David Fine to run a project brought forth by Professor David Kennedy from John Jay. And it's an anti-homicide, anti-gun violence strategy that they wanted to implement in 3 cities here. And I chose to take Bridgeport as the city. Now, I have no ties to Bridgeport. I didn't grow up in Bridgeport. The only thing I did in Bridgeport was undercover work in Father Panic Village, many moons ago.
Many years ago, yeah.
But I knew that through other assistant U.S. attorneys that I worked with at the U.S. Attorney's Office, that Bridgeport had a heart, and they really wanted their community and their image changed. So I figured, let me go down there. I'm going to work with the people of Bridgeport. And, they gave me hell at first, because I was an outsider. And in this process of getting to prove myself to everyone that I'm in it for the real reasons, I'm trying to make the community safer. We're going to reduce the homicide rate. We're going to offer services to people and make sure that people get opportunities other than being out in the street. And I proved to the community that that's what it was. And they followed me and they came on board with me. And I often say that the community was ready for when I got there, because they just needed someone to drive the train. And I got on the train as the conductor, and they fell in, and we got a lot accomplished. 47% reduction in gun homicides in the first 2 years that I was running the program there.
So how long has it been around now?
So now I think it's 6-7 years that's been around. And there's an individual in Bridgeport now. He's a retired Bridgeport cop, Harold Dimbo. Give him a shout out. He's doing a fantastic job in Bridgeport with the limits. There's all kinds of challenges and struggles with trying to maintain a program financially and so forth. But he's doing what he can, and the community is supporting him. But while I was doing that program, and we were offering 3 different paths. You could either continue to go down the path of criminal activity and get hit with a federal charge, or you could turn around and ask for the help that you need to find work, to find a job, to get some housing and so forth. Or you can ignore all of this and just go on your life and pull yourself up the way you want to. So the very first young man that came out and said, you know what, I heard what you guys had to say. I want some help. His name is Darnell. And this brother was scared to death. His house had been shot up like 8 different times. And he came to me and said, look, I believe in what you're doing. He says, I want your help. And to this day, he's got a career, not a job. He's got a career, he's got his own place, getting married, building a family, turned his life around 100%. And in that first 2 years that I was running that program, we had 56 ex-offenders a job. We got 56 ex-offenders a job. 10 of them got their first apartments for the first time in their life. And these are people that had never had a real structured job. But what I recognized in that process was, while we're trying to get them transitioned and help them to reset the button on their life, they had nowhere to go and nothing to do. So what was the influence on them? The influence was the negative street calling them back. Hey, come hang out on the block with us, hit this blunt with us, whatever the case may be. So if you ain't got nothing else to do,
why not?
Yeah, right. So I said, look, I'm going to create a space, a safe space, where no matter what gang or group you were ever involved with, it's going to be a neutral place, downtown Bridgeport, so nobody can claim ownership. Because you know how it is. Everybody wants to claim the east side, north side, Brookside, all that stuff, right? So neutral zone. And I said, I just want guys to come in, feel comfortable, safe, and unwind, and be able to talk about what's their challenges and what it is that's going to make them a better person and be able to sustain change. So I called it, I just wanted guys to come and hang out. So I called the session Hang Time. So the very first session was November 14th, 2014. We had 8 guys. It was me and an assistant U.S. attorney by the name of Mike Gustafson, who's out of Hartford. Fantastic guy, heart of gold, really involved with making changes in the community, helps in any way he can. Him and there were 6 other guys just coming home from incarceration and from the neighborhood. And we sat around and we ate and we watched television and we talked about issues. The next week, there was 14.
Wow.
And it just kept growing and growing and growing. And now I realize this is a program. This is more than just sessions. So now I have an opportunity to really, I've got them locked in here. They're believing in what we're doing. So now let's educate them. So now we do history lessons. We do job referrals. When I tell you we're not a service provider, we're a social service navigation program. But what we do is we bring service providers into the room and connect them directly. So a lot of these guys come out, they got PTSD. They've been institutionalized. They've been in and out of incarceration for a lot of their lives. And they're not going to be on Monday. You give them a piece of paper and say, hey, Thursday, go see, Miss Tierney over here. And she's going to get you an out. They're not making it there. So what we do is we have support. We have mentorship. When I tell you we give these guys and women now a place to feel a part of something positive, and it's transformative. You see people, just last night we had a session in Bridgeport. There was 30 people in the room. Wow. On average, we get 30, sometimes 50, 55 people in the room every Tuesday in Bridgeport. So the program has grown so much in Bridgeport that we had to expand. So we're now in New Haven, we're now in Waterbury, and we're now in Hartford. And we get the same results because the formula is the same. Giving individuals a place to belong, a safe space to unwind and learn and be educated on things that they didn't learn in high school. So we do all kinds of programming. We bring in speakers. I mean, we brought in everyone from a Sikh cleric to come in and talk about his religion from soup to nuts. We brought in politicians to talk about what the political climate is. How did they become a politician? We brought in home mortgage. We bring in everyone. And we also elevated the program to a place where we call Hang Time Mobile. Now, this is what you're going to love. So we take individuals from Bridgeport that have, most of them never been out of Bridgeport, right? Or out of Connecticut. And on a Tuesday, we learn about a historic site within a 4-hour, 5-hour bus ride of Connecticut. And there's a ton of them. That same Saturday, we load those people into a bus and we go to that site that we learned about in class. And we touch, feel, and smell pieces of history. And when I tell you again, transformative, what we get from people. And so we have a family environment at Hang Time. And that's why it's so successful. It's a no judgment zone.
We got 10 minutes.
Oh,
Her Time and then the production.
Okay. So Her Time was born as a result of Hang Time. So Her Time is an actual program in Bridgeport. So the program I described to you about Hang Time it was for men initially, but their girlfriends and babies' mothers were coming because they didn't believe that these guys were actually going to this program. They're like, you ain't going no, bro. You got a side chick.
You got something going on.
Chick. And so they would show up and they'd be like, wow, we really like this. So now Hang Time is integrated, men and women, all ages, sizes, shapes, and colors. We get people from Stanford, North Haven, you name it. People come because we have a camaraderie and a sense of community. And what we've developed in that room is a greater community than we actually have outside. And so we try to take what we do in that room and build it out. We do a lot in the community and so forth. So Her Time was designed for all of those women who were taking care of the babies and the sons and the daughters of guys incarcerated, right? And women incarcerated, right? So it's called Her Time. It's run by a young lady by the name of Shamir Holmes out of Bridgeport native. She's a dynamo, energy beyond. And we service and help women who have either been incarcerated themselves or have a loved one who's incarcerated. Now, there's also a program that we partner with. We call ourselves the Trifecta. And that other partnership is with CHAMP, Community Hands and Mentoring Program. So we have this thing. It's run by Ruel Parks, founder. We take care of the mothers and fathers, either through Hang Time or CHAMP, and he mentors the children. So we have a situation just happened last night. A young man's going to jail, and he came to us, never been to us before, came to us and said, I'm going to jail. I want you guys to take care of my son while I'm gone. That's the reputation we developed. So we're putting that his son into a mentoring program, and the mother will be a part of Her Time.
Great.
So Her Time, the play, happens April 4th.
And is that the name of the play?
Her Time is the play.
Okay.
So Her Time is an actual program in Bridgeport, only in Bridgeport right now. At some point, we'll probably expand.
Yeah.
But
and it's based on your documentary.
Yes. So Her Time, the play, is a sequel to a short film that I did along with Felice Duffy from U.S. Attorney's Office and several others. And it was a film called The 5K Motion. It's on YouTube. You can find it. Called The 5K Motion. And we filmed it right in New Haven. And we used no real professional actors. We used young kids and people in their real roles in the film. And we did it as an educational forum to let young Black, brown, inner city people understand the consequences of their actions if they're involved in the hustle, quote unquote, if they're involved in the drug dealing trade and helping to count money or hide the guns.
And that's more specific to women.
We
young
really
girls.
wanted it to be specific to the women because they don't think that there's a culpability factor for them because all I'm doing is counting the money and all I'm doing is hiding the gun. I didn't do nothing wrong.
Right.
And you did. And so this young lady in the film, Kim Williams, and this is loosely based on a real story. She's 18 years old. She has a daughter that's 3. She falls in love with a drug dealer from New Haven, from Church Street South Projects. And she is trying to protect him because he commits a murder with an Uzi, and he gets caught with, he has her hide the gun and his drugs for him. She gets caught going to do so. She gets sentenced to 40 years in federal prison. And she's expecting him to come along on a white horse and save her and say, it's mine, which anybody who's listening to this knows that didn't happen. So she ends up going to jail, federal prison, far away from home, far away from her family. She gives birth to her son, Brandon, while in prison, the drug dealer's baby. He ends up getting arrested years later for a murder, but she's in jail for 25 years. She comes home at 43 years old. And this play, the stage production, is all about her life, trying to reintegrate with the community that's no longer there. Church Street South is not there anymore.
Yeah, it's gone.
Everything is gone. The whole climate, the whole backdrop of her life has changed. She doesn't know her kids. And the real twist is her daughter is starting to relive her history and be just like her mother, involved in the streets. But the son is doing well because he attends Hang Time.
Ah,
come on now.
So it's tied in.
It's tied in. We showing some realness here. But we've gotten rave reviews, and this is our second showing at the Klein Theater, April 4th and April 5th, because it really does touch on urban trauma and the ripple effect of incarceration on families in the inner city. And it's from every perspective. It's from the child's perspective of having to, I got to respect this woman. I have to love this woman all of a sudden. She hasn't been around for me. I don't know her.
Right.
And the mother and the pain that she deals with trying to reintegrate and reset her life. And then the assistance that she needs and doesn't get. And then she finally finds the right path. But there's a bunch of twists and turns in there. So most people have experienced this show will tell you that it's an experience. It's not a show.
Is it just like the film in the respect that these are not trained actors?
No, I've got trained actors.
Okay. All right.
I've got trained actors and some that were formerly incarcerated. Matter of fact, William Outlaw, June Boy, He plays a court officer.
Wow.
Yeah. So shout out to William.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, listen to me. I'm all about keeping it real, and this play is as real as it gets. You're gonna laugh, you're gonna cry, you're gonna be angry, you're gonna be happy, because it's all about what happens on a day-to-day basis in every hood in the USA.
So, to put a nice little bow on this, what is it that what do you want the community to gain from the production?
So, great question. First time anyone's asked that question. So what's the takeaway? What's the action plan? The action plan is to first of all recognize that everyone on that stage is in your community. And when people are acting out and doing certain things a certain way, there may be a real reason behind it. And to then pause and see how you can interject and help those people through their struggle. First and foremost, respect the person who's come home from incarceration and is really trying to reset their life. Give them opportunities. That's number one, because they have an entire family that's waiting and hoping and praying and depending on them to do the right thing and not end up back in prison. So that's one takeaway. The other takeaway is understand the damage that happens to your family when you do something ridiculously foolish, make bad choices, and go to jail. Look at the end result of what it does. And so that's played out on stage. So there's a bunch of messaging in this thing. And most and foremost, that's most important, is that women have been the backbone of the family, splintered, our traditional family and non-traditional families. And when is it going to be their time? When are they going to get a chance to just be happy without taking care of everybody else?
And breathe.
So that's what I want the audience to take away, is some real life lessons and how they can better accept and recognize and help those individuals that need it.
Thank you, Charlie Grady.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. You are welcome to come back to the show anytime.
I'll come see you anytime. We go way back.
Yeah, we go way back. We go way back.
Yeah, way back.
Way back.
And listen,
without us not even knowing that our parents knew each other.
Exactly. So that's it. We all the way back. And you know what? Listen to me. I said it to you before. I'm going to say it right now. Y'all keep listening to Michelle. Michelle's the real deal.
Aww.
She has been in this game forever. She ain't going nowhere. She's a voice that needs to be heard in our communities and across the country. So you all support this station.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that, Mr. Grady.
All right.
And tell your parents said hello.
I will.
You're listening to the show on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, broadcasting live from downtown New Haven. We are streaming live on TuneIn Radio and newhavenindependent.org. We're also streaming live video on Facebook Live. Just go to facebook.com/New Haven Independent, or just go to your Facebook page and look us up. Join us next week. I'll be back here in the seat. Thank you, Harry, for all that you do every time. All right? And listen, tomorrow, be on at 10 a.m. and then at 6 in the evening. So if you didn't hear it fully, you can go back and listen to it tomorrow morning, tomorrow evening. Tell your friends, tell your family. The show's on. Ta-da.
Ta-da. My voice is killing me. My throat's killing me.